Welcome to the Vibe Within podcast. I'm your host, Gab Cohen. Each week, we will connect through stories and conversations about wellness, yoga, addictions, spirituality, mental health, rituals, and everything in between. The goal is to transform our traumas into strengths to create the change we desire in our lives. My mission is to help others by shining awareness on real-life topics so we can learn new ways to heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Whatever you are going through in this moment, you are not alone, so let's connect and heal our vibe within. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Gab Cohen. I just did an Instagram live a little bit ago. Today is Friday, November 6th when I'm recording this. I'm not sure when I'm going to actually put this out. I actually have a couple episodes that I need to put out, but I just did an IG live tarot reading and it was insane. I'm talking about it on here because I know some of the messages that came through are for people who are in toxic relationships. I'm personally not in a toxic relationship right now, so all of the messages that came through were just like purely for people who are in physically abusive relationships, mentally, spiritually manipulative relationships, emotionally manipulative, and I'm sorry if any of you are, but the reading was really, really powerful, and at the end, like, my favorite transition card came out right at the very end when I pulled one final message from Spirit. So if you and the reading was just like so positive and like so many like beautiful messages came through. So I recommend going and watching it. It's on my IG TV, and it's like a 30-minute live reading, and it'll be up there forever. So I'm super excited to start this episode because this one's been cooking within me for a little while. The last week, I've had some mental health issues going on, and I know that I'm not alone here because we're in the time of the election and just Scorpio season in general. Scorpio season is like this secretive, dark, shadow, silence type energy, and it's got me to curl into a hermit kind of hermit card mode. And it's funny, like before I came on here to record this episode, I was like, wow, I've been so in hermit mode, and I haven't really been talking to many people about what I'm going through except for my therapist. And I mean, I'm in full-blown love with my therapist at this point. She is just like the coolest woman. She really gets me, and she is not like your typical therapist. She's more of like a life coach and therapist, but it took me a long time to find a good therapist who really vibes with me. But what I was saying is that, so before I came on to record this podcast, I've been thinking about how it's funny that I have a podcast where I talk about my mental health and what I'm going through, and it's very personal, but I don't share this information with like really anyone in my reality, like in my real in-person life, because I think that there's a huge difference between exposing yourself to the people in your life in your physical reality, because sometimes they don't want to know. Sometimes friendships and connections are better off with more of like a surface level approach, because you don't want to tell everyone in your life everything that you're going through and kind of dump everything on everyone, because first of all, everyone's going through a lot, and if we were all dumping our deepest, darkest, shadowy moments and mental health, you know, pitfalls and roller coaster rides, it wouldn't really make those relationships all enjoyable or pleasant. It would kind of like inject this layer of intense emotion, and sometimes our relationships to our friends or family or roommates, they need to just feel lighthearted. They need to just feel like, you're just living your life, you're just going through the motions, nothing crazy. To me, that's a good place to be sometimes. Like it's like a safety net. Like you have these friendships that, they don't know all of your deepest, darkest secrets. They know some things, but they don't need to know absolutely everything, because I feel like that's a way of protecting ourselves and protecting others. I feel like I've been really trying, and I talk about this a lot, but I've been trying to take some steps out of the deep end of shadow work. And what I've realized is that since I've been deep in the trenches of shadow work and, listening to all of these like very, very deep conceptual consciousness podcasts, I don't know if you're familiar with the term Kundalini awakening, but I was just talking to someone on Instagram who is kind of like a bipolar disorder advocate and like researcher almost, because I know that they have bipolar. But basically, long story short, just to get into this this episode, I think that I have some bipolar tendencies, and I'm sure that many people who aren't diagnosed with bipolar have moments in their lives where their moods go up and down, their happiness meter goes skyrocketing, and then their depression meter goes all the way down. But for me, the last week, it's been exactly a week, I've been dealing with very, very strong gusts of emotional chaos. One day I'll feel like I'm high on drugs, and I'm not. I'm sober. I don't even drink. The only thing I ever drink is like those hard kombuchas, which is just kombucha. So yesterday when I had my therapy session with my amazing therapist, I kind of went through all of my symptoms and my ups and downs, and I basically took like some serious notes this week on my moods, my triggers, things that I feel could have triggered this episode. And what we came down to is, and it's interesting because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about mental health and bipolar and all these things. My favorite podcast that I've been listening to is with Dr. Rick Hansen and his son, Forrest Hansen. So they have a podcast together, and it's literally, it makes me so happy just listening to these two guys. Sorry if you can hear my cat running around and being loud. She's just playing and having a good old time, loving life. So Dr. Rick Hansen and his son, Forrest Hansen, they have an amazing podcast, and he combines neuroscience, Buddhism, and psychology. And they have, several episodes where they take deep dives into like these neurological and psychological kind of issues. And when they were describing, bipolar disorder, and there's type 1, there's type 2, and I'm just going to explain what they are. Maybe you guys resonate, but after listening to the episode, I realized that I think I have type 2 bipolar. Um, so basically, I feel like I've kind of had like a hypomanic mania episode the last week, and it's really interesting because listen, when somebody says, "Oh yeah, I have bipolar," or "I have like borderline personality disorder," or um I have major depressive disorder," most of the time when you look at someone who says that they have like a really, you know, intense disorder or mental illness, for the most part, they probably look healthy and fine on the outside, but that's because they're working so hard to hide the fight and to hide the stress and to hide the loudness that's happening within them. So I want to just let you guys know that if you're struggling with bipolar or any of these things that I'm talking about, I understand how challenging it is to keep it in and not, you know, show everybody around that you're going through these like really intense high and low moods. It's hard to find stability, and a big part of my coping mechanism when I have these like high and low moments is just isolation and resorting to even a deeper hermit mode kind of phase, because for me it's like, well, I don't want anyone to see me angry or freaking out, or you know, it's best that I just breathe and chill alone so that I don't scare people or so that I don't make people feel uncomfortable. And that's, you know, that comes with also a host of things. I'm sure that many of you are people pleasers or codependent, and you get triggered when you have any type of altercation or miscommunication with someone, or you know, words have gotten lost in translation, or your message hasn't gotten across properly, or maybe somebody has labeled you in some way. That can be a huge trigger for bipolar. So yeah, I have many things that I think triggered it, but also it's just there's a lot of dark and deep energy right now in Scorpio season. So basically, um, Dr. Rick Hansen says that even intensely joyous or positive moods can be triggering for someone who is emotionally vulnerable, and that could actually trigger a manic or a hypomania episode. Um, he says that type 1 bipolar is, you know, major depressive episodes with 2 weeks or longer episodes of highs and lows and a background feeling of worthlessness or sadness. But the 2 weeks or longer is a big kind of part of bipolar 1. That means that the swings of the mood last longer. So that's that's type 1. Type 2 is major depression with hypomanic episodes, which last less than the normal amount of manic episodes, and it's more of a dialed down thing. And then he said cyclothymic disorder, or hypomania episodes combined with depressive episodes that don't fit the full criteria for major depression, but it's still significant in their life and they have waves of anger. And then there's bipolar not otherwise specified. Um, this was really interesting that he said in the podcast all about bipolar. He said bipolar oftentimes has a direct link and connection to genius instincts in people, highly creative and intuitive people who are sensitive to energy, and high IQ folks. Artists and creatives tend to be a large population of patients who have bipolar. And this is, you know, this is super interesting because people who are artistically, gifted or spiritually gifted, they might have just a lot of energy coming through, a lot of communication with a higher realm. People who are really tapped into spirituality can have these super super high cracked open moments, and then these super super low in the trenches, like quicksand moments. And I'm going to bring it back to what I was saying before about how I was talking to this guy on Instagram who is a bipolar kind of advocate. He was talking to me and he said that by the sound of what I was explaining to him, and he was looking at my posts and what I talk about and what I write about, he said it could be that I'm going through a quote unquote Kundalini awakening. And what that is a cracking open of consciousness, of shadow. And that's what I mean when I say, like, I sometimes feel like I need to take a breather, and I need to go back to the shallow end of the pool so I can just, like, chill, have fun, be more lighthearted. But once you've cracked the egg, you can't really go back. That's also another thing that Dr. Rick Hansen says, and I love that because it's true. Once you crack open the egg, you can't fucking put it back in the egg. That's how I feel about shadow work. Once we wake up to all of the shadow and the darkness that our conditioning and our programming, and I say this lightly because I've already talked about this in a previous episode. So if this topic really strikes your interest, the whole how awakening and Kundalini awakening can be dark, like it's there's also a very very deep layer of darkness within that, because it's like you can't escape the epiphanies, and it's almost like you're living in this like spiritual vertigo, and you're just like, whoa, everything's too intense. I'm getting way too many messages. I'm having way too many epiphanies. I just want to feel boring and basic for a day. Like, is that even possible? I don't think you can really go back. But if that stuff interests you, I recommend going back and listening to Buddhism Makes Me Less of an Asshole, that episode. And a lot of you guys have messaged me saying that episode really resonated with you, because I talk a lot about family and shadow and dynamics and, awakening to what is, which can be very depressing, and accepting what is, and allowing our family to be where they are, and to not force relationships into something. And with that acknowledgement and that inner wisdom of just meeting everything where it's at, that can come with like a really intense layer of depression, because it's like, well, I guess things are never going to be the way that I wish, or I guess things are never going to be this way with my family member, with my sister, or like whatever it is for you. It's like within the knowing comes a little bit of a jarring, backlash, because it's like, oh, well, then comes the grieving. So I did want to talk about this, and I talk about grieving in that episode too. The Buddhism Makes Me Less of an Asshole, but this came up again yesterday with my therapy appointment, and I don't share everything that I talk to my therapist about. Obviously, that would be like way too much, but I feel like this is a huge part of shadow work, and I'm assuming a lot of you guys are kind of dealing with this too, is grieving relationships and grieving things that will never really happen again. Like, I was telling her how I really do miss my mom, and I do miss living with her, but living with her was very, very toxic, very unhealthy, because of her husband, because of my stepdad. And I know that I will not ever, live with her again unless, worst case scenario, like I have to go live with her. because of financial reasons or because I can't find a place to live or whatever. Um, but I deep down inside know that I will never live with her again. Um, and it's a hard pill to swallow, and it's really rough and depressing to think of that. And this idea that I've been, kind of lingering in is this feeling of homesickness, this feeling of, like, I don't know if you ever feel like this, but your soul feels homesick for a place that you don't even know what it is. Like, temporarily where I am right now, I'm subletting, and it does feel like home. But there's a big part of me that feels really disconnected from where I'm living right now. I don't really have any friends here. Um, I communicate with the majority of the people in my life on Instagram. You guys DM me or you email me or like whatever. That's, that's a reality that a lot of us are living. I mean, a lot of us are not socializing in person, so I'm not the only one. But this homesickness is like this longing um, to live at home. And I feel like that's part of the shadow work and the inner child healing. So the inner child is still very much part of us. And it's kind of like that inner child is like frozen and stuck and back in time when things started to go haywire, whatever age that might have been. That's like the frozen in time inner child, and that inner child is just longing and craving for things to go back to the way that it was before shit got really fucked up. So for me, in my personal inner child healing journey, my inner child is frozen in time, when my parents were together, when we lived in, my childhood home and everything was fine. And then, all of a sudden we find out, I found out in a very, very, I don't want to say toxic, but it was just an unhealthy way to communicate that my parents were getting divorced. It was like very secretive. It was held away from me. I was, really young, maybe like maybe 8, 9, 10. I'm not really sure. And I found out just in a very bizarre way. And it was because my parents were ashamed and they were scared and they were just trying to do their best and they didn't want to hurt me and my sister. But now looking back, I realized that my inner child is still very, very loud within me, and she screams at me and she's triggered a lot. And a big part of the triggers is feeling secure and safe at home and feeling taken care of and feeling like I have a clean and safe home to live in. This is why I have such a problem with messy people, or like my dad's a hoarder, which I talked a lot about in that episode, Buddhism Makes Me Less of an Asshole. So it's like all of our triggers, they come from and they're rooted from that wounded inner child. And that inner child is whenever a trigger comes into our adult life and our adult path, that inner child says, "Oh my God, no! Like, remember when that happened over here?" And then they come through and they make us feel unsafe in all of these new relationships and these new situations in our adult life because we're comparing them to the past, the frozen past. And so I realized, that's where I'm at, and I definitely I'm grieving. I'm grieving living with my mom because I really do miss living with her. She's amazing. She's it's just the dynamic that she has going on with her husband is toxic, and it's not healthy for me to be around, or really anyone to be around. Yesterday I went to the thrift store, and what I realized is that the moment I walked into this thrift store, I felt like my spirit guides were like screaming at me and saying, this is a safe space. You know, like thrift stores are safe spaces, though, if you think about it. It's like everything is there for people who are, you know, they don't make a lot of money. Whoever's shopping there really admires getting new things, but maybe their funds, you know, it's a very emotionally charged place because all of these items that are in the thrift store, and this is like a superstore, so they have furniture, they have glassware, they have trinkets, they have records, they have clothes, they have an entire book section, an entire furniture, and like, you know, random ass shit. Um, they even had like an electronic section with like old computers and stuff. But when you walk into a place like this, you can feel the energy that all of these items are holding. I mean, they've been in homes, they've been in households, and a lot of these items are old and vintagey, and you never know what you're gonna find. So I feel like if you're going through a moment or a phase of depression or of anxiety, of uncertainty, of feeling disconnected from your spirit guides, or, you know, you don't even have to go to the thrift store to buy anything. Like, it's just an experience. I got two things. I spent $2, but I spent like an hour or two there. Um, and it was just really nice. I looked at all the books and I got so many messages and signs and synchronicities. It's like, you know, that's when I realized that when you walk into a thrift store, I feel like it's kind of like a portal, and it connects you to your spirit guides really, really quickly. It's almost like your spirit guides just kind of like hang out there, because they feel safe, because they feel like, okay, all this energy, all these, you know, possessions that, you know, that are special to people, like they didn't want to throw them away, they donated them because they had the feeling that somebody else could benefit from these items. That's very special to notice, you know, like, oh, like these items are old, but they hold a lot of meaning and they're sacred. um so yeah, connecting to your spirit guides, go to your thrift store, let me know what happens. um let's see, I have so many notes in here. um Silver linings. Oh yeah, silver linings. So what I was talking about before with the bipolar thing, and how like really intuitive, spiritual, artistic kind of people may have bipolar or other mental illnesses. Um, a silver lining is that you get the opportunity to connect with spirit, or with source, or with your higher power, and not everybody in this world is going to get that experience in this lifetime. And I feel like if you can connect to that insight and you have that capability, that's almost like kind of winning a version of the lottery. But with that lottery ticket also comes some darkness, because, you know, with awakening comes darkness. And there's actually two episodes that I made last year, the magical darkness of awakening part 1 and part 2, and I do talk a lot about that as well. I was at a different part in my journey, but it still definitely resonates. It was around after the 12/12 portal, and then January, and at that time I was receiving so many messages, because this is before COVID hit, but I was receiving so many messages from my spirit guide saying, get the fuck out of Philly, move in with your mom, and even though she lives with my stepdad, and I got all these messages saying, focus on your health, focus on your health, focus on your physical health, just go, you need to retreat, you need to focus on your health, everything you can build your life anywhere, but my health was really, really declining. And I think that that was like a huge sign from the universe, and kind of like preparing me for COVID, because then a month and a half later, COVID hit. Um, and I was safe and sound living at my mom's in Florida, even though I was living in a toxic, environment around my stepdad. I was still safe. I was still taken care of, and I was able to save money and focus on my health. So, um, I was watching a tarot reading the other night by one of my favorite tarot readers. Her name's Wendy Bones on YouTube. She's fucking awesome. I love her energy so much. But what she was saying is that what we need to focus on is peace and pleasure. I don't know if you're a Sagittarius or a Scorpio rising, but I'm a Scorpio rising and I'm a Sagittarius sun, and I think I was watching either one of those readings. But yeah, that really rung true with me, because peace internally and externally in all of my relationships, that's like number one for me right now, because I know that when I get in these moods and these like up and down moods, and I know that I'm not alone. Everybody has up and down moods, but I feel like the fact that I'm, kind of figuring out if I do have bipolar 2 or ADHD, because I get really, really hyperactive, and it's like I can't stop. I can't stop doing, I can't stop going, go, go, go. It's like, even though I know I need to lie down and meditate or take a break, I literally like can't, and it feels like there's a lot of energy like within my body that's like kind of vibrating. And I think that's also kind of going hand in hand with what that guy was saying with the Kundalini awakening. But yeah, the peace and pleasure thing, that really, really, really rung true with me. I'm just going down in my notes. Your mind is your sanctuary. And I know that this is a quote that Viktor Frankl has written about. He is a Holocaust survivor, and he wrote a book about, living through Auschwitz, and how he explained that your mind's a sanctuary, and no one can actually get inside of your mind and like push buttons and turn dials and turn on switches and press buttons and shit. Like nobody has the capability of actually physically going into your mind. And with that, there's a lot of liberation, because it's like, oh, I own my mind. Like nobody else actually can physically grasp my mind. Nobody. You can talk to a therapist and you can explain to them everything that's going through your mind, but there's still that sacredness of, you best, your energy best. And the fact that our mind is a sacred place and nobody can fuck with it, like obviously we let the media fuck with our minds. We let people fuck with our minds. If we're in a toxic relationship or a manipulative relationship, we let that person kind of fuck with our head, because we just want love. We just want, to feel good. We want to feel like we have someone to connect to. We want to feel good, and that's completely normal. I feel like if you're in a toxic relationship and you're scared of being alone, it's like, I really encourage you to go watch the IG live or the IGTV reading, because I go deep in this. But it's like, what's worse? Staying with someone and feeling kind of like chained and like not able to express yourself, or maybe they don't respect you. Maybe they treat you kind of poorly, or maybe they don't respect your time. Maybe they lie to you. Maybe they're acting sketchy or shady. Maybe they don't make you feel good. Like when you're around them, your self-worth doesn't feel like it's thriving. Is that like something to stay in? Like, what's worse, being alone or being with someone who makes you feel really miserable and not good about yourself? So, I mean, I've been single for about 4 years, and I feel like, again, I feel like my moods go up and down. Happiness and depression, the meters of those two, it's really hard for me to find this like baseline of just like coasting. But when I say that I feel like I'm happier than I've ever been, I do mean it, because For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm completely detached from codependency. And like when I was younger, like a few years ago, I was like obsessed with trying to like find a guy who like loved me and who like was obsessed with me and who treated me well. Like I was like that hopeless romantic, like um fantasy land, like, oh, like this guy's so into me when he really wasn't. And this was just a few years ago, so it's like not even that long ago, but I feel like a completely different person. I used to get really, really tied into these short-term relationships with dudes who I would just like hand over all my power, and I would, if they didn't text me, I would completely, like, my mood would completely plummet. That's codependency. Um and what I want to say is that if you're moving into a new chapter of your life, into this more like single life, let's just say single, isolated, new chapter, like new fresh energy, like nobody can fuck with me, I'm just by myself. There's something really beautiful about that energy, because with that comes like this magic dark phase. And magic dark is a term that I get from Lacey Phillips' work with manifestation. She kind of like coined that term, but the magic dark phase can come in many different, modalities or times in our life. Like a magic dark can be after we come out of a relationship and now we're just totally single and the birds are chirping and we don't think anybody's going to come through. Or the magic dark phase can come when we're kind of in transition of finding a new career, finding a new job, or we've applied to like a lot of gigs or a lot of jobs, and now we're kind of just like playing the waiting game. So I feel like I'm kind of in a magic dark phase right now, and the birds are definitely chirping, but the birds are chirping loud. I feel like the birds are chirping, and that's like our spirit guides, like sending signs and synchronicities. And like I seriously feel like it's been raining synchronicities, and I feel like it's actually normal to be so tapped in that you see all these synchronicities happening all the time. I think maybe it's not so normal for a human soul to be walking around on earth and like not have all these like synchronicities pouring into their lives, because that means that maybe they're living in some dimension that's really like disconnected to where the soul came from. And like for me, like consistently like having synchronicities and signs, and like when I went to the bookstore, when I went to the thrift store, it was like all these messages. It's like overwhelming, and you kind of get this like soul vertigo. You're just like, oh my god, like everything's too intense. But that's our spirit guides and like higher self trying to communicate with us that like either we're on the right path, like yes, do the thing, yes, go for it, yes, do this, yes, leave the relationship, yes, apply for that job, like what the fuck do you have to lose type energy. And if we're not tapped in to all the synchronicities and messages that are going on around us, then that means that we're kind of just like lost in our head and stuck in the past and future tripping. I have Truman Show written down. Oh, so when yeah, so when all the synchronicities happen and you're kind of in that like that like vertigo, like whoa, I'm dizzy, like this is so intense kind of mode, it kind of has that feeling of like the Truman Show. And it's like I've had moments where a lot of synchronicities will come through and I like start laughing out loud, and I'm just like, you can't make this shit up. Like, or I'll like look up in the sky and be like, laughing like there's somebody up there looking at me and just like kind of watching like I'm just an entertainment to them. Like it's like funny, it's comical. The way that our spirit guides can come through in these messages, it's like funny. They're comedians up there. Yeah, it's crazy. The Truman Show is such a trip. And that's what it feels like when you have all these things like conversations and um you know, just symbols and moments where you're like, there's something higher that's trying to communicate with me, you know? So I don't know about you guys, but it seems like the older I get, the more of a tomboy I become. But at the same time, no matter how tomboyish I feel, I still need quality makeup. And I definitely still want to feel glammed up, especially during the holidays. Even if you're alone this holiday season, it doesn't mean you have to just hang out in your pajamas. You can still dress up, you can still put on makeup and feel good about yourself. Thrive Cosmetics is a new beauty brand that I discovered, and they have high performance, award winning products that are both vegan and cruelty free. And as you guys know, I'm vegan, so that's kind of important to me. I don't want to be putting, products that have come from an animal on my face. It just, I don't know, just kind of grosses me out when I think about it. But I like to keep it simple, especially since I'm still healing my hormonal acne. And what I do love to do is always enhance my eyes, because it always makes me feel good when I just put in a little bit of effort into my eyes. And a lot of you guys have actually commented on some of my pictures of my eyes. I've always been obsessed with mascara. I've always been a mascara junkie. So when I found Thrive Cosmetics, I was really, really happy with the mascara they have. It's the award-winning mascara, and a lot of the holiday sets right now actually come with a free tube of it. It's called the Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara, and honestly, this mascara it's bomb. I mean, I think the main thing with mascara is that the brush needs to be legit, and this is like a really, really nice brush, and what it basically does is it makes you look like you're wearing kind of fake lashes, but they look natural. They're flake-free, smudge-free, clump-free. I love it. The packaging is really nice and sleek. And I also like the Brilliant Eye Brightener, which is really, really easy to use. It makes such a huge difference just by putting it in the corners of your eyes, and it just brightens up your entire eye. And that's all I've been using recently is just the eye brightener and the mascara. If I'm just like running errands, or if I'm going to the grocery store or whatever, this is a very simple way to brighten up and enhance your eyes. So if you're a mascara junkie like me, definitely give Thrive Cosmetics a try, because you will absolutely love it. And with every purchased product, Thrive Cosmetics is helping women in need to thrive by donating funds and products. I really like that. I feel like we need to be more mindful of where we're putting our money and our energy. So start thriving and help women in need today by going to thrivecosmetics.com/vibe for 15% off of your first purchase. That's Thrive, CAUSEMETICS.com/vibe for 15% off. Thrivecosmetics.com/vibe. It's true. It can feel pretty trippy at times. I have written down hyperactive soul. Yeah, I mean that's an ADHD, bipolar, hyperactive soul. I feel like that's also kind of like, it reminds me of like the hungry ghost kind of archetype. Like with awakening, we can find ourselves really like caught up in our shit, and we realize like, whoa, I'm like grasping, I'm craving, it's like I constantly need something to feel good, or I'm constantly hungry, or not in like a literal sense, but you could also, eat food and just like never feel full, or you can, For me, like the whole shadow work thing and feeling like I'm too deep in the trenches, too in too deep, it's like I'll binge on all these, spirituality podcasts and deep, deep stuff that gets me spinning. It gets me spinning. And it's like, whoa, it's like, how do you slow down from there? And I feel like that constant craving to listen to something else, to listen to something new is like, that's kind of, that's also a form of grasping. Um, you know, the other night, so it was like 5 or 6 days of this feeling like I had like this hypomania kind of internally like buzzing bipolar kind of energy, and I was like, this is crazy. I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating a lot, like, and that those are two main factors in a hypomanic bipolar kind of episode too, is not sleeping a lot, not eating a lot, and having a lot of energy. And I've had a lot of energy. I went on a run like 3 days in a row, and like, I know for me that's not normal. And then I also had a night where I wrote for like 5 hours because I'm writing a chapter of a book. I can't really say what it is, but I don't know when it's coming out, but it's a book, and I got asked to write a chapter of it. So I'm like in the process of writing a chapter of this book, and it's like I couldn't stop writing, and it got to the point where I was like, make it stop, turn my brain off. And that was the moment where I was like, wow, I don't have any control over this. This feels different. This feels like bipolar, like this feels like it's intrusive. It's invasive. That's the kind of energy. And it's like I couldn't even sleep without getting some words out. I literally was like writing in my iPhone notes at like 5 in the morning, or like waking up at like 7 in the morning, and like I needed to get some words out. And it's like that's overwhelming, and it's just not like pleasant kind of to be in that energy. So that's what I realized. And so after that kind of 6 days of that, I decided I'm gonna take, people are so loud outside, it like severely pisses me off. So I decided to take a CBD edible, and I think that there's like a small trace of THC in it because it's delta 8, so it was like a delta 8 CBD gummy, so I think it has like a little bit of THC in it. So it's a hybrid, and I had the tiniest big piece of it, and when I tell you I spun out, I fucking spun out. I had just more anxiety, more panic, more uneasiness. But what came from that like experience was I wrote down all of my triggers. I wrote down all the things that I feel like I need to do in order to get out of this bipolar, hyperactive soul type situation that I'm in. And one of those things is I need to stop listening to so many podcasts. It's too much. It's overload of information. It's overload of deep conceptual information. You know what I mean? Less is more, and I feel like our brains can only absorb so much. And then when the brain has reached its limit, I feel like that's when the body starts to go haywire and the nervous system starts to freak out. And for me, it's like when I get in that mode, it feels like my insides are fluttering. Like my heart's fluttering. I feel nervous. I feel uneasy. I can't just sit down. That's a problem. That's a problem. Having these days where you feel like super, super high and you're on drugs, and you're talkative and you're creative and you're feeling great. And then the next day you're feeling like completely angry and bitter and like so pissed off. Like that to me is all of a reason for me to figure this out, and just to see if I could, get some help or talk to a psychiatrist or take the holistic route. I've been reading up a lot about holistic ways of healing bipolar and, mood stabilizing ways holistically. And I've read that apparently amino acid therapy helps, magnesium helps, and also stopping caffeine altogether, which I don't drink coffee anymore, but I drink matcha. And matcha does have, a natural caffeinated kind of feel. So I'm stopping that, and I'm going to see how that helps. Um, Sex tea. Oh my God, yeah. So I don't want to make this episode too long, but just to end a few things. Um, I am celibate. I know I've talked about this a lot. I don't have sex. I haven't had sex in like a year and a half, coming on, yeah, like a year and a half. Um, and I'm fine with it. I'm totally fine with it. I actually feel great. And I'm healing my sexual trauma and my sexual assault and abuse that happened to me in college by cleansing my sexual cords. But I still have some cords connected to the last guy that I had sex with, which was a long time ago. But that just proves that the body, it takes a lot of time to heal. And this is the first time in my adult life that I've been sexually cleansing that energy, and it's taking time. So that just goes to show that it doesn't take it. It takes years to finally heal from sexual trauma. But I have this sex tea from this company called Your Tea, and they're like an Australian based tea company, and I forgot that I had an entire box of sex tea of it here. And the other night I decided, okay, I'm just gonna like drink the sex tea, whatever. It also is really good for digestion, so that's why I was drinking it. And that night I had a sex dream, and it was a wet dream, and it's like these things, they don't happen just like out of the blue. It was like my soul, the subconscious part of ourselves, like, will make shit happen regardless of what we're doing, like in our physical reality. So like in my physical reality, I'm pretty much starving myself of sex for a reason, to cleanse. You know how people go on like fasts, or they go on juice cleanses, or there's people who like have gone on like these wild like 2-week no food fasts to like spiritually heal and physically heal and like whatever. So that's what I'm doing with sex. I think that's pretty normal. But my soul and my subconscious literally like took the steering wheel and, gave me a wet dream. I feel like me making the sex tea was the tiniest intention and sign that my higher self needed in order to communicate with my higher self that said that maybe I do need sex, or maybe I do need pleasure. And we live in a really weird time right now with COVID. Obviously, we're not just going to go and have sex with anyone. Maybe you are. Maybe you still have one night stands. If you do, I hope that you wear protection or are just like safe. No judgment. I used to have one night stands like all the time. And that's why I am now celibate, and I am cleansing years of toxic sex that traumatized my body and my nervous system. So that's where I'm at. So if you need to have sex dreams, maybe go buy some of that sex tea. This is not sponsored at all. I don't get paid from them. I forgot that I even had that tea in my cupboard. Let's see what else. Last notes. I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. Lots of bipolar notes. So if you're dealing with these high and low, high and low, high and low, that in itself is very confusing to the nervous system, and I recommend honing in on optimism, honing in on all of your sacred rituals, journaling, free writing, deep breathing. I've been listening to like YouTube high frequency hertz sounds on when I go to bed. It's like there's tons of them on YouTube. When I go to bed, that's what I listen to. Also, the other night when I was having that panic attack kind of phase, I put on Bob's Burgers and it completely helped. Bob's Burgers is fucking hilarious, and it just like made me really happy and made me feel comfortable. And I guess that's also kind of like soothing the inner child, you know, like what can you do to just like remind yourself that you're not just this adult that's like out in the world like bare naked and unsafe and nobody's helping you and you're all alone, you know? Like, yeah, we're all alone, but like, yeah, we're all like going through the same shit, and we have source and we have spirit and we have our guides and our passed on loved ones to come through and to help us. So definitely connect to your inner child and put on cartoons, color, like do like these super, super basic things. You know, at the thrift store, they had like tons of brand new coloring books and children's books, and you could literally just go to the thrift store and hang out and like sit down and read some books. If you don't want to buy them, don't buy them. But yeah, I'm just gonna end it on that. Thrift stores are fucking portals to our spirit guides. We can find these silver linings and everything, and meditation, you know, even if you can't meditate for 20 minutes, maybe just 5 or 6 minutes, journaling, writing down all of your triggers, writing down all the things that are pissing you off. And also what's been helping me a lot is writing down all of the things that I'm like really, really grateful for at night. Very detailed things that have happened like during the day or during the week. Also writing lists of resources. So writing lists of people in my life who have reached out to me, who make me feel comfortable in who I am, who I know I can reach out to and talk to, whether it's on the phone or texting. Another thing that helps is virtual therapy groups. I always talk about it, Dharma Recovery. You can go online and find the entire Google Docs document that gives you all of the Zoom links, and they have them like based on time. There's thousands of meetings, guys. You don't have to be an addict to go. You can be depressed, anxious, codependent, trauma survivor, eating disorder, alcoholic, drug addict, sex addict. I've seen it all. So I'm going to leave you with that. I hope that you can tune in to abundance, your resources, your gratitudes, optimism, what things are working for you, and how can you nourish your body and your soul and your inner child. Make that your priority. All right?
This year has reminded us of the importance of saving for the unexpected. And as a bank, our job is to make that a little easier for everyone. That's why at Huntington, we're so proud to introduce Money Scout. It analyzes your checking account to find money that's not being used and moves it to your savings automatically. It's that simple, so you can always be saving, even now. Learn more and enroll at huntington.com/moneyscout. Huntington. Welcome. Money Scout is subject to eligibility, terms and conditions, and other account agreements. Member FDIC.